The good times are rolling in. Ghana is experiencing major economic booms in 2025. The Ghana Statistical Service is saying that the state of the economy is really, really good. And you are wondering, is it because the government is doing a good job or something else is happening? What are the factors driving the economic boom that the Ghana Statistical Service is reporting? What are the economic factors driving that? That is what we are seeking answers to today on this platform. My name is Enebi Tony. I'm a Ghanaian writer based in the US. I like to have intellectual conversations about the economy, the history, and actually the culture and everything about Ghana. So if you're an intellectual minded person, you like intellectual conversations, subscribe to this channel. And now let's get back to it. Let me start with something small and then we move on from there. What is the Ghana Statistical Service? So they are the national agency charged with the efficient production and management of official statistics. So the most credible source of data in Ghana is the Ghana Statistical Service. And I, for one, I trust the Ghana Statistical Service because their data is not only credible, it is widespread. They don't just sit in Accra and compile data. They compile data from around the country, which is good. And so, Ghana Statistical Service reported that the economy of Ghana grew by 6.3% in the second quarter of 2025. And we are in September. So why are we talking about the second quarter now? I'll tell you why. So the Ghana Statistical Service have something they call the quarterly newsletter, where they compile 3 months economic reports or the national account of Ghana every 3 months. But the way they work is during a quarter, they compile the data and then clean up the data, because when you collect data, you in data process, there's something called cleaning up the data. That is when you maybe mistakes that are in the data, you correct them, you interpret the data. What does this data mean? And so that also takes a process. So usually the April to June, which is the second quarter of this year, they'll collect the data. Then from July to August, for 2 months, they will clean up and interpret the data and put together a report. And that report is what they usually put out in September. So the April to June report comes out in September. That is why we are talking about the second quarter now. Does that make sense? Good. And when they are talking about the economic performance of the country, they usually focus on GDP. GDP means gross domestic product. GDP simply means the value of economic activities in the country. So every work that everybody is doing in this country, how much does it cost the country? How much does it contribute to the country? So the monetary value of the various economic contributions that happen in the country is what becomes known as GDP, right? And so GDP is the main indicator of your economic performance. Inflation is important, dollar rate is important, but they are not what tells you how the country is doing. Inflation is 2%, and so what? Do you have money to buy food? The money to buy food is what usually gets captured in the GDP. You understand? And so that is why GDP is the most important indicator of economic performance, right? And so when they say the economy of Ghana grew by 6.3%, what that means is that 6.3% increase is how much economic activity is happening in the country, how much money people are spending in Ghana. That is what they mean by that. And they even broke it down further and said, if you take the oil industry out, because the oil industry in Ghana is pretty stable, it is not going up, it is not coming down, right? If you take the oil industry out, the economy of Ghana grew by 7.8%, which is also good. And even crazier, if you focus on the biggest industry in Ghana, which is the service industry, the economy grew by 10%. So, I said the service industry is the biggest industry in Ghana. What do I mean by that? I'll tell you why. So, agriculture used to be the biggest industry in Ghana, right? There was a time in Ghana where if you went to school, they'll say over 50% of Ghana's economy is driven by agriculture. Everybody in Ghana is a farmer. Until 2005. In 2005, agriculture industry went down to 41%. That means only 41% of the economy of Ghana became or is agriculture in 2005. And even crazier, it went down from 41 to 30% in 2006 within a year. So you're asking yourself, what is happening? What happened in Ghana between 2004 and 2006? It wasn't Kufuor. It was the mobile phone boom. 2004, 2005, 2006, that is when more people in Ghana started getting mobile phones. So more people in Ghana started doing, what's the name? Space to space. I was in high school around this time. I was in St. Peter's around this time. And so I remember this was when people started doing space to space in Ghana. And why am I saying space to space is service industry? Service industry is anything that doesn't involve physical activities. You are providing service to somebody. So space to space is a service. Hairdressing, service. Barber, service. So the service industry, banking, insurance, investment, people know those as the big service industry in Ghana, but we also have small service industry. And so the service industry, driven by the mobile phone boom, started overtaking agriculture as the main industry in Ghana. And so as we stand out today, agriculture is only 22% of the economy. The service industry is 41% of the economy. So more people are in service than farming. Is that good? Is that bad? I'll answer that later. What I want to say is the service industry grew by 10% in the second quarter. What drove that growth? That was the period the National Forest Reserve was pumped into the economy by the Bahama administration. And I think there was also some IMF money that was contributed to the economy. Was that what grew the service industry? A little bit. But majority of the growth of the service industry came as a result of tech boom. There is a tech boom happening in Ghana right now. More and more young men in Ghana are using tech to do big things in Ghana. Ghana is becoming the next Silicon Savannah of Africa. You know, Silicon Savannah is Kenya, because in Kenya, there are a lot of young men and women doing great things with tech right here in Africa. I live in the US, but I say right here in Africa. And Kenya has been for a long time known as a big tech driver in Africa, Egypt and South Africa also. But Ghana is on the come up. And why is this happening now? Why is 2025 when all this tech boom is happening in Ghana? I'll tell you why. 3 reasons. Number 1, Fintech. Number 2, entrepreneurship. Number 3, agritech. But I will put asterisk to agritech and focus on entrepreneurship and fintech. Fintech means financial technology. And fintech is growing in Ghana because of a few reasons. The mobile phone boom I mentioned only keeps booming. So about 80% of people in Ghana over the age of 15 have mobile money accounts. So more people in Ghana have mobile money accounts than bank accounts. This is why more banks in Ghana are offering mobile banking, because the convenience of mobile money is making people not open bank accounts. But you need bank accounts. And so fintech is happening because banks are now creating more and more mobile banking apps. And not just that, banks are trying to be compatible with mobile money. And for banks and mobile money to be compatible, somebody need to service the network. And there are a lot of young men and women in Ghana building apps, building services, building networks, building platforms to service the connection between mobile money, banking, and even common paying for stuff. I think there are even people doing escrow where you can do e-transactions in Ghana, right? So if you go to jumia.com to buy stuff and pay with your mobile money, there is somebody who is making it possible for Jumia to receive your money. It's not just MTN. The person who is making it possible for you to pay Jumia with your MTN mobile money, because Jumia may not necessarily have a mobile money account, is part of the fintech industry. So because more and more people are using mobile money to do transactions, there is growth in fintech now. That is one. And I say entrepreneurship because when I was growing up in Ghana, I had a lot of great ideas, bro. I wanted to create every app for some. There was a time I wanted to create an app for hairdressing, where you go, you pick a hairdresser, and then you pick the hairstyle, you set up transactions, you set up like what's the name? A deal with the hairdresser. You pay money on the app. The hairdresser come to your house, do your hair, and then we pay the hairdresser. This idea I had a long time ago, right? But this may not actually work in Ghana because people know they are hairdressers. People go to their salons to do their hair. They don't need me, right? But a lot of young men in Ghana have crazy ideas. But for a long time, we didn't have the resources to create these ideas. And guess what? In 2022, when ChatGPT launched and AI started taking over the world, a lot of people were scared because a lot of people thought that AI is going to take out everybody's job and AI is going to destroy the world's economy. I was one of the few people who was optimistic about AI. And here is why. AI is a democratizing factor in the tech boom. What that means is people from countries like Ghana who don't have resources, who don't have the money to hire like 100 software engineers to help them develop an app, now have AI to help them do that. And so AI is making it easy for people to build apps and platforms. A lot of websites, app producing platforms come with plugins that makes it easy for people to just assemble platforms even more easily. And so more and more young men in Ghana are able to implement their ideas with little resources. We already had ideas. Ghana have some of the most creative people I've ever seen in my life. And for a long time, these ideas were not being implemented because we didn't have the resources. Now, AI is making it easier for us to implement these ideas even with little resources. Thanks to AI, the economy of Ghana is growing. So AI is a contributing factor to the economy of Ghana. I thought I'd come to agritech, but even before agritech, education was mentioned as one of the sectors that is really driving the service sector. And this is because there's a little bit more digital education or e-learning happening in Ghana. More and more young men in Ghana are learning online how to do things, data analytics, cyber security, software engineering, project management. All these things people are learning in Ghana, and they're not just learning in Ghana. they are getting jobs around the world. So there's this thing happening in the world where companies in developed countries like the US and Europe are hiring people in third world countries. So if you live in America and maybe you hire a software engineer, you probably have to pay them a starting fee of $100,000 a year. But you are just a small startup in America because of AI. Maybe you learn how to code and then you created what's the name, a business, but you don't have $100,000 a year to pay somebody, but maybe you have $20,000. What will you do with that? You can hire somebody in Ghana for $20,000, which is below minimum wage in the US, but huge enough in Ghana that can be a life-changing money in Ghana. And so businesses in America and other developed countries are hiring people in third world countries. And so there are young men in Ghana who are working for tech companies in America. And that's also driving the GDP. And I'm not saying the government is doing nothing. For this to happen, we need to use internet. So the cost of internet, which some judge is working on, is a government factor. Electricity is stabilizing because if you have a job in the US, they don't care whether you have light or not. You're supposed to do their job. So if you don't have electricity, it can affect your productivity, right? And so this is important government factors that can help out how the industry is playing out, right? And the third one I said I'm going to talk about was agritech. I think agritech is the future. I mentioned that the tech industry is taking over and agriculture is retrogressing. But we will always need agriculture. There's never going to be a time in the history of humanity that we don't need food. We are always going to need food. And so for us to be able to eat small food, we need to, what's the name? Find ways of driving up productivity in agriculture without having to increase manpower because the manpower is leaving. This is where agritech comes in. In America, there are tractors that are using AI to make decisions. So you go to your computer and type to the tractor, plant the seeds in one straight line, and the tractor will do the job. Plant the seed zigzag, and the tractor will do the job. Plant the seed 5 meters from each other. The tractor will do the job. So they are using AI to program tractors to do planting and sometimes harvesting. It's happening right now. And so agritech is a way of bringing these technologies to the third world. I think that is the next frontier of tech development in Africa. More and more young men are going to figure out how to use tech to drive up agriculture in Africa. It's already started happening, but it's going to happen even more. And I'm excited about that. I'm excited about the tech boom happening in Ghana right now. I can't wait to see more and more of it. So subscribe to this channel if you like more conversations like this. And let me know your thoughts. Are you excited about the tech boom or I'm just talking now?